May 11th, 2021, and you are at the City of Wausau Common Council meeting. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item is the roll call. Don't push your button until Clerk Leslie tells you to.
You may begin voting. Alder Ryan, yours is not lit up yet. We have 11 members present.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda are proclamations. I'm wondering if there's someone here to accept the World Migratory Bird Day proclamation. Otherwise, you can read them in your packet. We have the World Migratory Bird Day and also childhood apraxia. There's a ton more on the website, so please enjoy all those proclamations. Next item on our agenda is public comment. So this is for pre-registered citizens for matters appearing on the agenda and other public comment. The only person I have signed up is Gary Gisselman. If you'd like to approach the podium, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Gary Gisselman, 319 Park Avenue, Wausau, Wisconsin, 544. I come to the City Council this evening in reference to the repealing of the ordinance with regard to the referendum. I would trust the City Council is quite familiar with this issue. Goes back to 2005 when petitions were filled throughout the city, over 2,000 signatures wanting by direct legislation this exact ordinance. And thus it was the City Council at that time established the ordinance. It could have went to referendum, but we decided that with so many votes at that time for it, we decided that it's best to establish this ordinance with regard to the referendum before you, the question before you this evening. The next issue came up in 2015 when the issues came before the city with regard to 2 questions on a referendum with regard to the instituting a fee for garbage pickup and also referring to an instituted fee for stormwater management. And the council, at that time, the people spoke. The referendum number 1, no votes got over 4,900 votes, and the yes votes got 1,800. The referendum, the other referendum, the yes votes got over 2,400, and the no votes got 4,200 votes. So at both referendums, the people spoke, and I think that this was a very important part. This engaged a lot of City Council discussion at that time, wanting the issue, wanting to establish these fees, and the decision was to send it to referendum. And I would just want to remind the City Council this evening that I think the people spoke twice, although maybe not that recently, but I would think that that would still weigh in on the discussions this evening, because I think the people may still be feeling the same way with regard to the instituting of these fees. So I just sort of a little bit of historical part of this, but I think it should be a part of your discussion this evening. I think that those 2 instances when the people spoke were very important in the light of this discussion. So thank you very much. Do I have any time?
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, I reserve my time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is committee report, Board of Public Works. Would you like to say anything about this, or? Okay, we'll just place that on file then. All right, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. So that is file number 210401 through file number 210108. I would entertain a motion to accept, to pass. Yes, motion by Neal, second by Peckham. Any discussion here? Okay.
Mayor, I wanted to pull item 19-1113.
I feel like in order to do that, I'm going to force you to read it. Noted. We'll vote on that separately then, and I will read the whole thing delightfully so.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 11-0.
All right, we're moving on to file number 191113. It's an ordinance from Plan Commission repealing section 23.06.50 regulations for vacant buildings, amending section 23.01.23 definitions, section 23.02.02 standard zoning districts, section 23.02.20 rural holding zoning district, section 23.02.30 single-family residential 2 zoning district, section 23.02.31 single-family residential zoning district, section 23.02.32 single-family residential district, section 23.02.33 single-family residential zoning district, section 23.02.34 mobile home residential zoning district, section 23.02.40 duplex residential zoning district, section 23.02.41 two flat residential zoning district, section 23.02.42 townhome residential zoning district, section 23.02.43 multifamily residential zoning district, section 23.02.52 suburban office zoning district, section 23.02.53 suburban mixed-use zoning district, section 23.02.54 urban mixed-use zoning district, section 23.02.55 downtown periphery mixed-use zoning district, section 23.03.03 regulations applicable to all land uses, section 23.03.05 table of land uses, section 23.03.06 residential land uses, section 23.03.28 accessory land uses and structures, section 23.06.02 group and large development standards, section 23.06.03 vehicle access standards, section 23.06.05 visibility standards, section 23.06.06 off-street parking and traffic circulation, section 23.06.40 fencing standards, section 23.06.42 swimming pool standards, section 23.06.51 through 23.06.99 reserved, section 23.09.05 definitions and standards, section 23.06.51 through 23.06.99 reserved, section 23.09.05 definitions and rules related to sign groups, sign categories, and sign types, section 23.09.27 sign permits, application, enforcement, and revocation. I would entertain a motion to accept this. Motion by Herb, second by Rasmussen. Any discussion here? Yes, Alder Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess, is Bill, you're on virtually?
Yep.
I guess I had some questions, and I understand it's more of a planning technical issue, but it just seems there's a number of properties that I'm aware of that were single-family or single-family with 2 rentals on the property that eventually ended up having some of their garages torn down, and then I think in the past that they were not able to replace those and pads as such. And so going back on, I guess, item number, under section 23.02.02, going on to number 7, it's saying the setback is 30 feet and minimum attached garage setback for a rural holding district is 30. But as you go below to a single-family residential 2 zoning district. It has been crossed out and put to 25 feet and a minimum setback of 25 feet. And so I didn't know if there was some reason for the 5 feet difference, or was this, with all these changes, something that got missed?
Bill or Brad, I don't know who wants to address that
Think-
question. Oh, good.
Maybe I could take it. So the rural holding and SR2 are kind of new districts. They're larger lot districts. So when you take a rural holding, it's like large parcels that are annexed to the city. So the setbacks are a little greater because it's likely more than an acre of land. SR2 is also like a large lot, maybe like a half acre or more, single family lot. And we had 30 foot as a setback. Well, some of our newer subdivisions were pegged as SR2, but their existing setbacks are closer to 25 feet. So we're just trying to straighten that out by lowering it down to 25 feet. In most of the smaller lots that are in Wausau and the kind of the core of the city are down in SR5 or SR7 districts where the setbacks are even less. So we're trying to accommodate people that want to redevelop or reinvest in those properties without having to go through a variance.
Okay, and another part was, let's see here. In regard to, let's see here. This is about 2 flats, and let's see, just above section 23.03.28, that there's a number of single-family homes in my district as well as in other districts that were converted to 2-family. And they may have a 1-car garage, they may just have grass or that kind of thing, and that it's requiring 2 paces per dwelling unit. So just happens a property kitty corner from me, they have a 1-car garage, and then going into it is grass where another car is parked. So is there some issues here for older homes grandfathered in to keep what they originally have? Or is this owner going to have to, go ahead and create 3 more parking spots in order to
No.
have 4?
Yeah, we're going to accept grandfathering of the existing parcels. This is more for when a new property is developed or there's a major redevelopment where we'd look for that. We'd also count the garage space plus the driveway to meet the 2 parking minimums.
Okay, it just happens for this 1-car garage, it's grass with just worn out where the 2 tires went for the parking spot outside the garage. I guess I do have a few homes in my area that do have multiple generations of family living in a single-family home. And so, I understand having a certain minimum of 2 cars is pretty average at this point. But to say that there's a maximum of 5, and I don't know, within that, are you including a spot that might be for an RV, a fishing boat? I do have a family right near me that does have 5 spots right now, and then a couple of their adult children are parking at the curb because there's not enough room. So at a certain point, I don't know if it's going to be considered adequate if you have multiple generations of a family living in a large home.
That's really just something that we had from our previous codes that we carried forward.
Okay, so I guess we could bring that up in the future then to revisit that.
All right.
Okay. The other point I guess I wanted to make is about the bicycle parking areas. It seems that this is something new, so again, for parking lots that have over 40 automobiles, there's going to be a requirement to have 5% of your parking spots be for bicycles or up to 20 bicycle parking spaces. So again, is this something that can be grandfathered in, or we're going to have a number of businesses looking for bike racks?
It will be grandfathered in.
Okay.
All right, Alder Neal.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that, perhaps if there are any specific items in this laundry list here that somebody would like to pull for, separate consideration, could we just do that and deal with the rest?
I just have one more, Tom. I happen to have a resident that lives on the north side of Reservoir Park, and then it does have a slope to it as well as a knee-high wall. It has coated chain link fences as a way to protect someone from falling off this ledge. And so it's in their front yard, it's in their corner. They've had it there at least 5, maybe 10 years. And so is that something, again, that will be grandfathered in?
That is correct. They're allowed to maintain that fence.
Okay, that answers my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I'm not seeing any. I think we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much. All right, we are moving on now to file number 210503, Mayor's Appointments. You can see that our handful here, we have Calvin Dexter appointed to the Ethics Board, and then reappointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals, Nancy Hoffman, David Burke, Dave Overbeck, Nan Giese, and then a reappointment to the Building Advisory Board, Tom Madrovich. I would entertain a motion. Motion by Neal. Second by Watson. Any discussion? I'm not seeing any discussion.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 11-0.
All right, thank you very much. We're now moving on to file number 150613. It's a resolution from the Economic Development Committee approving the third amendment to the Blanker River East Brownstones Development Agreement, Phase 3. I would entertain a motion. Motion by Watson, second by Neal. Any discussion? I'm not seeing any.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-1.
Thank you. All right, file number 061016. It's an ordinance from the Finance Committee repealing section 3.10.010. It's referendum. I would entertain a motion. Motion by Rasmussen. Do I have a second? Second by Peckham. Any discussion? All right, Alder Rasmussen. And reminder, you can use your buttons to request to speak.
Thank you. I did want to speak to this. This came forward from our last Finance Committee meeting, and this is something that, in my opinion, has needed to happen for a long time. Having dealt with a number of budgets, this actually is one of the #1 hindrances to our city being able to create creative and flexible change to bring mill rate relief to our residents. And so as an example, and the example we had in the Finance Committee was garbage collection. Right now, the city of Wausau residents pay for their garbage collection through their tax bill, but it is not a separate flat charge. They all put out the same container every week, and they all get the same exact service. But there's a huge disparity when you use the value of someone's home to charge for a service. So they all put out the same container, but you'll have one house that pays $900 a year to do that, and you'll have another house that pays like $17 a year to put out the same container to get the same collection every week. Patently unfair to our taxpayers. Now, in 2005, when this referendum was, or provision was added and the petition that Mr. Gisselman referred to was routed, it was because at that time the city was talking about creating a stormwater utility. And in reaction to that, a number of well-meaning residents went out and got all these signatures to force a referendum on any new charge. At that time, there were no safeguards at the state level to prevent municipalities from essentially double dipping. Create a fee and continue to tax people the same way. And out of fear of that potential double dip, where there would be no reduction in the tax rate, we'd just all keep paying more, this direct legislation came. Fast forward 3 or 4 years, the Walker administration came. The Walker administration, under the interest of giving tax relief to taxpayers, created safeguards that say any new fee instituted by a municipality has to be met with a commensurate reduction in the levy. So if we want a new fee, we need to reduce our levy by an equivalent amount. We can't do this double dipping anymore that people were afraid of. So the state now prevents what the direct legislation was trying to stop. So now it's a redundancy. But it also keeps us from bringing about change that can cause fairness. So a half hour ago in the Finance Committee, we just looked at an example of garbage and refuse, leveling that playing field for our residents. Doing so would cause a reduction in our mill rate for every taxpayer in town, 48 cents. And that's the stuff, we don't have the power to give our residents that type of relief now because this is in the way. And so I've been a taxpayer advocate for a long, long time. And if I thought this was a bad idea for taxpayers and that it would ultimately end up costing people more in the end, I would have never brought this up. But at the end of the day, with the safeguards we have in place at the state level, we need to find a way to give ourselves the flexibility to compete with other municipalities. And so as an example, when you look at a house for sale and you talk to a realtor and they say, oh, it's much easier to sell a house in suburb A versus the city because the city's taxes are too high. But no one really delves into the nuts and bolts of why the city's tax rate is so high. And it's because stuff like this is included in the tax bill. And so the discussion about whether Wausau needs a stormwater utility or whether Wausau needs a separate garbage fee, all of that is separate actions, and none of that gets approved tonight if we pass this. It just gives us the ability to do the job that we were elected to do. We're here to make the tough decisions for the city. We're here to prepare a reasonable budget. We're here to tax people fairly. We're here to provide services that they want. And I don't feel with this in the way that we can do that effectively. We've not been able to deliver relief that we could have delivered years ago. And so when we went to referendum in 2015, and we wanted to talk about stormwater and garbage and all these things, we hosted a number of public information meetings, and we went to neighborhood groups to talk with people about how it would work. There were huge misunderstandings, and all of it was incredibly low attended. Most of the people in the room were alders, and a few concerned citizens. But by and large, many, many people misunderstood what the effect would have been. And so post-referendum, I would go out and have conversations with people and say, you know, had the referendum passed in 2015, every one of us that just got the same trash container would maybe put out $48 a year or something to have that collected. Right now, we have this $17 versus $900 issue going on. And the resident would say to me, well, if I'd have known that, I would have voted yes. So it was glaringly obvious to me after the referendum failed, people didn't understand it. And so I think it's time to repeal this. The state has put the safeguards in that this was intended to address. And so it's served its purpose, and I think we need to pass this and allow ourselves to move on.
Thank you. Alder Killian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I think some things have been stated already this evening, some by my colleague and others by the citizen who addressed us earlier, but it appears that on two separate significant occasions, the people, citizens in large numbers, demonstrated and indicated, I think, what their will and voice was. Now, that happened through a very large petition that was already referenced, and I don't recall precisely how many signatures it was, but it was a heck of a lot of signatures, and I've been on the ground getting those signatures before, so this was no small number or feat. And then we had a referendum, and the citizen earlier, Mr. Gisselman, had mentioned the math of that referendum, and that did not pass by a margin of 10 to 20 votes. I think the voice and the will of the people was overwhelmingly clear. And yes, we are here to do the things that were itemized earlier a few minutes ago, but primarily we are here to represent the people and the people's voice. So yes, we should look out for the taxpayer, but I don't think the taxpayer needs some parental attitude from City Hall on Grant Street telling them what's best for the taxpayer. The taxpayers have already told us what they feel is best for the taxpayer. So it's already been decided by the people's voice that this be in place, and it would feel if earlier comments are correct, that people simply didn't understand, and post-referendum they've changed their opinions and attitudes, then it should be no problem bringing this back to a referendum to repeal it, because then it would reflect what's been stated, but it would be a legitimate vote by the people. And I think with the type of numbers we saw in the petition and the referendum, that neutralizing the people's voice with 11 votes at City Hall, although this will not get 11 votes, would not be good governance. And so if there's a question about is this good for the taxpayer and let's represent them, then I say this was brought in through a referendum, and it should legitimately be taken out if it's going to be taken out by a referendum. So that would be my suggestion, although that's not a motion. Thank you.
I just have a point of clarification I'd like to ask the attorney. Did this, we were talking earlier, this expired, and the ordinance cleanup is kind of what we're talking about here?
No, the ordinance didn't expire. It was adopted, as Gary Gisselman described, by direct legislation rather than it being implemented through a referendum. What actually went to a referendum was whether to institute the stormwater and garbage fees, not whether to repeal this ordinance. It has to stay on the books for 2 years, which we're long past that, and then
Okay.
you
the
can
2
simply
years,
repeal
okay.
it on a majority vote of the council.
Okay, thank you. Alder McElhaney.
Thank you. I guess I can talk to this as what I saw back in that time period as well. And I have talked about this with my neighborhood group, not this year, of course, but last term. We were talking about the garbage disparity. I will say that when this referendum came in 2015, I was not on council, but I was very aware of many people in my district and around the community concerned that this would be double dipping, and that, oh, if they get a fee tax, they won't take it down, exactly as Alder Rasmussen said. That was the big fear. It wasn't that we want to pay more for garbage or whatever. Now, go ahead 6 years, when I spoke to my neighborhood group, I would say 98% did not understand and said, what? You mean I'm paying more for garbage? With the 2 little cans, is everybody? And I go, yep. And, the stormwater issue as well. And it's user fees. So do we, it's like water. Do we all put all the water together and then divvy it up per household? We don't. We use user fees. This is what it is. I do think there was, more distrust of government at that point. I don't know what year that came in. Was that after, I don't know if it was after 2015 that the state changed. So I guess, I don't know, but I would like to see more fairness. And I do have a couple of realtors that come to my neighborhood meeting. And they talk about Wausau real estate and how it is talking to Wausau real estate compared to our adjoining municipalities. They're telling me that it is, they're trying to show, but in Weston, you pay your garbage, you pay this, and they're just looking, it's not apples to apples. So that is an issue, and it's a hard thing to jump over. I don't know the answer. I don't like going against referendums, but I do agree that the education at that time was not great. We have much better ways of educating now with social media, with, we have taped meetings, whatever. I don't know which way would be better, is to go back to referendum. I think we need to have some more voices, though. I think that people need to understand what's happening. I would like to see the mill rate go down for everyone. I don't know. I would like to have some more information, though. Do we have any idea what we think the rate of garbage would be across the board if everyone paid the same?
Maybe this finance director, maybe have a comment.
Yes, so at the last finance meeting, we discussed some of the things that would have to be decided by the common council before we move to that charge. One of them would be, well, what services would you want included in the charge? Would you want yard waste site operations included in the charge? Would you want the large item pickup included in the charge? Those would be some of the things that you would want to decide. Many communities add a little upcharge for administrative costs, because there is an administrative cost to placing it on as a separate charge. But based on our current costs, it would be about $100 a household for just curbside. And then we had, as Lisa said, it would decrease the tax rate about 48 cents per thousand, and looking at what, which properties would save money and which properties would pay more. It was about a house at about $194,000 value that would be at that break-even point. If your house was worth more, you're going to save money. If your house is worth less, you're going to pay a little bit more, depending on, the value of the house, because the tax rate now is based on the value of your house.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. And so it's important to keep in mind that, passing this tonight does not create that. But that's one example of how you can bring mill rate relief to your residents. And so because the state has addressed, the petitioners were worried about the double dip. The state addressed that. They put the safeguards in. So any new charge, and you don't send out, if that would happen, you don't send out a separate bill for garbage for $100. You get your tax bill, and itemized on your tax bill is X amount for your property taxes, and like $100 or whatever for your garbage, and at the end of the day, you still get a bill, and you pay it at the end of the year, just like you always do, or on 3 installments, or whatever people do. They're not getting a separate bill, like a separate water bill. It's all included in the taxes, it's just parsed out, and it's a consistent amount for every home. Most of our surrounding communities do it that way. We choose not to, and that puts us at a competitive disadvantage, because we're providing the same good service, but we're charging for it in this convoluted fashion. And so that's a problem. But at the end of the day, my point is that the state has enacted safeguards to prevent what people were afraid of in 2005. So any new charge you put in is going to have to be met with a levy reduction. So the idea that you're going to save 48 cents on the mill rate, that's not optional. You don't get to not give people that credit. If you put in a separate fee for garbage, you are dropping your mill rate by 48 cents. You don't get to say no and use the money for something else. And that's what people were scared of. There's no need for them to have that fear now, because the government at the state level took care of it. And at the time, that tied local government's hands, but that's okay, because any of this, that it makes it revenue neutral for people.
Thank you. Alder Peckham.
Thank you. I would just say I'm solidly with the chair of our finance committee on this. And I would also point out that we're not voting tonight on whether or not to start charging individually for refuse pickup. We're voting tonight on this referendum matter. And I am been around long enough so that I was out in the audience. I was in the room when this thing passed, but I was out there instead of up here. And it was kind of a classical political pickle for the council at that time. And because they had the petition come in, and the people, I think they had 2,000 signatures or something like that. And so what the council was told was, you have a choice through this direct legislation stuff. You have a choice. You can either fight us on this and go on record as, kind of denying the will of 2,000 people, or you can adopt it right now. And there was a chill through the crowd, or through the council, and they said, oh, well, we don't want to seem to, rebuff all those petition signers, so we better enact this right now. So that's what they did. It wasn't particularly politically brave, but that's what they did. I think that with the danger with these referendums where you're asking for any sort of fee increase is that people won't be well informed about the issue, and they'll see fee increase and it's down. There's, in one of the more, well, it's not that reason, but when Weston voted on whether or not to contribute their share to the cost of having Metro Ride serve their village, they put a referendum out, and it turned out that the average homeowner would pay $10 a year to have city bus service. And they looked at that and saw there's a fee increase, I'm voting it down, and it got thumped. And I think if they'd thought it through and thought, it's $10, I can, part with that for this additional service for our community. But people don't, by and large. They just say no. So I think we should give ourselves a little more flexibility here. I think we've proven to be responsible custodians of the tax dollar, and we should vote for this measure.
Thank you. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask Finance Director Grote, could I just confirm something, please? Before I make false or incorrect assumptions here, I just wanted to confirm when you talked about the break-even point, and if I recall, it was 194,000 on the home value.
For
Is that
garbage, yes.
correct? And I may be simplifying this a little bit, but would I then be correct in coming to the conclusion that if someone has a home less than that value, then if we went this direction, they would be, if we went this route, paying more for the services than if we left it baked into the taxes? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
And then my comment on that, then I'd have in addition to feeling that this would kneecap the democratic process, which I've already covered in my earlier comments, then I think that anything that would raise the cost of services for the poor working class and a percentage of the middle class is completely off the table. I mean, if someone could have said to me, well, this may not be great in terms of the process here, but we are going to be helping the most vulnerable, I don't know if that would have got me there, but it certainly might have gotten me halfway there. And now that I'm hearing that we're going to increase the cost of services for really our poorest citizens with that value price, I mean, this is an off-the-cuff assumption, but that pretty much raises the fees on that for all of my constituents on west of the Wisconsin River, and a good percentage of them east of the river. So I think, as we've talked about with affordable housing, and yes, the reality of income inequality, not just in the country and in the world, but in Wausau, Wisconsin. And I think that's always been markedly apparent, that chasm we have here. We should not do anything to raise the cost of services for regular folks. We should be trying to at least preserve and maintain the services at the cost. But I say, for those who are having a hard time, particularly in, I guess, a pandemic with some novel virus, perhaps we want to recognize that and actually give some relief, not bring them more costs and problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. From what I recall as being a neighborhood leader when this was brought up, I believe Mary Ann had a spreadsheet looking at what the cost of the different carts would be for homes. And I recall one of the Forest Park leaders had asked about that, and I had thought the rates back then were maybe $45 or so at the time, and for a home that was valued at like $75,000. So maybe our approach, maybe how it was brought up was confusing. But with the new carts and that, there was lots of questions about how would it be done? Would it be cost saving, the value of the new trucks that ran on propane and that, and then the implementation where it just seemed carts were dumped in certain areas and there weren't enough carts. So it ended up being a big problem. I guess, and back at that time, I think we were talking about some of the average home at that time, the average was maybe around 125,000. Now, that may be the average when you look at all the expensive homes versus the cheaper homes, but there is a large section of my district that homes tend to be under 85 or under 100,000, and there may be a few, but not hundreds that are over 194,000. And it just seems that we have a lot of people that are working part-time, that are on a fixed income, and seniors as such, and having to go from a cost of what they thought was included to their taxes and thought was averaging $40 to $50, going up to $100, that may put them over of what they think that would be. We also still have people that are concerned about their real estate taxes and the effect with a lot of the sales for homes are impacting neighbors' homes that aren't selling, and then the cost of high rentals. So we already have neighbors that are concerned about, can I afford to continue living in Wausau, and what is the city doing for us? So I agree with Tom that I do think for those that can afford a more modern and expensive home, they have the disposable income to be able to handle the higher real estate, and that's part of when they buy a home that they realize it. But for those that are living within their means and are only affording what they can, having this large increase is extremely difficult. But for myself, I just cannot agree taking away the referendum, and I think we need to hear from the people. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I think it's important to focus. This vote tonight is not about garbage. Garbage is one example of conversations that we are not even allowed to have in the Finance Committee, in the context of our budget, and as a council, because this hurdle that is an antique from 2005 that has been remedied by state government still exists. There are no other neighboring municipalities that have a provision like this on their books. They can have a free-flowing discussion about what they want to do or not do to serve their taxpayers. We can't. We are hamstrung by this. And, I think if we want to talk about kneecapping anybody, at the end of the day, we cannot deliver good things to our residents because we have this obstruction. And so had the Walker administration not put revenue neutral safeguards in, we would not be here. But at the end of the day, I think we have to consider this now because this is a totally different situation that we exist in now than what existed in 2005. So this vote tonight is not about garbage. Now, a few months down the road, if we have a discussion about leveling out garbage fees and districts and alders don't like what's happening there, then vote no on that particular item. If we talk about a stormwater utility or a transportation utility or anything else that comes down the pike someday, at the time, whoever is in these seats can just vote no. And so we just need to focus on the fact that this is about giving ourselves the ability to have conversations about more than just state aid and property taxes. We cannot take a different approach even if we want to today.
Thank you. Alder Neal.
Thanks again, Mayor. Well, there's another way to look at this. First of all, when you're talking about, again, just examples, we're not voting on action on the things we're talking about so much as they're examples of things that might get impacted down the road. But when you're talking about, the trash collection question, you inevitably have to have the discussion about disparity of, bearing the burden and the relative merits of equal bearing of the burden. It's a user fee. On the other hand, when you talk about something like the stormwater utility question, and this is why I do support repealing this, this is an example of, I'm sorry, but the voters shooting themselves in the foot because the vast majority of the money that comes to pay for stormwater management comes from property owners like residential and business. And it's not based on things like the size of frontage. It's not based on things like impervious versus pervious surfaces. There is a large segment of our population that pays nothing, $0 at all for stormwater management. Zero. With a stormwater utility, it would now become more of a volume issue. And people will have to carry their fair share of the burden based on their usage, which can vary a lot. This is why, representational government is here for a reason, to try to work towards the best interests of the people. And sure, you can hear uproars and you can hear people saying, I don't like it, and a lot of times it's a knee-jerk reaction with lack of information. I'm not trying to be arrogant here and dismiss people's voices, but when the numbers show that this is going to help them in their pocketbooks significantly, then I sure would like to have the ability to do that, rather than just lay it out there and have them vote it down because they just didn't get all the information they needed for an informed decision. That's part of the dilemma we have in representational government. Not everything can or should go to binding referendum. I'm all for public hearings. I'm interested in opinion referendums, non-binding. But the proliferation of binding referendums on certain issues that are not clearly black and white, like a yes or no versus, on some issue of the day that's in the public domain, that everybody has a very strong opinion about, based on a lot of coverage and a lot of intelligence, fine. Lay it out there for a binding referendum. But something like this is an example where the populace came up short because they didn't understand it, and it made me feel bad because we could have helped them out a lot. I support repealing. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Martins.
Thank you. First off, I'm just going to start off by saying I'll go on the record that I support the repeal of this referenda. And I remember, back in 2015 when this came to vote, and to the public. And it was more, the referendum was more, a referendum on the current administration than it was on the inaction of user fees. And since that time, the political landscape has changed a lot, especially in how cities can operate and fund themselves. As Alder Rasmussen said, we've now there's limits on creating user fees that are revenue neutral. So there's mill rate relief if we were to enact a user fee. As a body, our hands are tied in budgeting because we cannot, we're at we're imposed levy limits. And those mill rates factor into what our levy limit is going to be. Then I think in the long run, our ability to enact user fees as opposed to rolling rolling everything into all-inclusive tax bill will help the property owners in the long run because they'll see the value of services. They'll see, what's trash collection? What does that cost me? They'll see what's my burden on stormwater. They'll see, how public transportation, what is my, what am I putting into that? And that will help them, I think in the long run, be more informed in where their tax dollars are going and what services and benefits the city of Wausau is bringing to them. And just to kind of finish things up, I know we need to be divorced from the talk of garbage collection and fees and property, and with this referendum, but looking at the home values in my district, and I know, just as an example, my house, it's, my home, my assessed value was below that $193,000 break-even point. So, while on the face, it's not going to be revenue neutral, for me, because there'll be a slight increase in my tax bill. I still feel that in the long run, it's going to be a benefit. And if we can figure out some of these equity issues in the garbage collection, then I think in the long run, we'll be better off as taxpayers.
Thank you. Alder Peckham.
Thank you. I would like to raise a point of order here. The measure before us has to do with the referendum. There are 3 sections. Whether we repeal the referendum, whether anything in conflict with our action are hereby repealed, and whether this shall be in full force on the day after its publication. There's nothing on the agenda that would allow us to drag in refuse collection charges or stormwater management issues. Those are separate issues to be decided at a later date, and I would ask the chair to rule anybody who's raising garbage collection fees and all that other stuff henceforth out of order. Thank you.
Thank you.
Point of inquiry
Okay.
for the parliamentarian. It's my understanding, although I'm kind of a neophyte, even after being here a year, that talking about the consequences or the implications of a specific item is within the purview of that item. So as Alder Peckham said, we may not want to veer off into a different universe. I do believe that discussing the implications and consequences of a particular item are germane to that item itself. My question would be, is that correct?
I would agree, and I think everybody's already stated that we are made it clear. I think Alder Rasmussen, a number of you that have spoken, Alder Neal also said that. It's hard to decide whether or not you want to repeal this referendum requirement every time you want to institute a new fee. if you don't talk about what the potential impacts may be. So while it could be close and others might disagree with me, I think it is germane, but I just want to make sure that everybody does understand that you're not voting on instituting any kind of a fee tonight or moving anything off anything. Those are just two examples that have been raised because they're part of our history, and it's part of the packet, and it's been described in the memo in the packet. So all that's on the agenda tonight is do we want to repeal this ordinance, which is laid out in its entirety, and it's very short, right there in the memo. And so I do think it's fair, although I think we've covered that point pretty well, but I'm not here to restrain debate. And the mayor may want to weigh in on the point of order, but to your germaneness question, I do think it's germane. Well, it's not what we're voting upon. I think the impact of it on the repeal of this referendum requirement is germane.
I guess the only point I would mention about the point of order is if you feel it's necessary, feel free to speak up during the discussion, and we'll have the parliamentarian advise me, and I'll make a ruling. Sound good? Okay. Alder Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one other clarification about what we discussed at Finance is that we're talking about user fees as a potential way to get additional revenue and then reduce the tax levy. And when I think of user fees, I think of it like regarding dog licenses, for building permits, and also for looking at water and sewer, where there's something you're doing that you want to do and want to use, and that you're paying for it. We'd had some discussion for those that weren't here during the finance about whether if you're not using it, if you have a home that's empty, it's not being rented, it's just being vacant for a number of years, why would you have to pay a user fee for a property that's not being maintained? So we were talking a little bit about it, and I understand that we're kind of delving into different ways of looking at it. Or if a few people want to just go ahead and get one cart and share that cost. So I do think we need to delve into it deeper, one way or the other, but it's a slippery slope when we don't keep residents involved and telling them we're going to repeal and we're going to do what we want without their input. And I guess I don't want to forget them. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess just in response, no one is forgetting the residents or their opinion. Reminder that anything we ever go to do is going to be discussed in a series of open meetings where people can come, they can watch us on TV. We hopefully this summer we'll have neighborhood groups starting to meet again, where we can talk with residents, where we can network with people. We are certainly not dismissing the will of the people with this. And this is not a substitute or a roadblock to public engagement. We have shown ourselves to be able to engage with the public anytime over anything, and we certainly would continue to. Obviously, any discussion with any change to the refuse system comes from public health and safety, and any change to the money part of that comes from finance. All of those are open meetings, and they're well noticed. So we would certainly welcome anybody to come and talk to us about that, and we certainly would never shut them out.
Thank you. I don't see any more discussion. I think we're ready to vote. Oh, apparently we do have one more discussion. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do think that some things can be incremental, and that often on the national and international level, some analysts would call that the tiptoe, where something begins with another. And I would just say that I think that we can't arrive at a certain conclusion if we do not provide that pathway. And I think that voting yes for this tonight does provide a pathway for certain consequences. Thank you.
All right, I don't see any more discussion. I think we're ready to vote.
Please vote. Motion passes 8-3.
All right, we are now moving on to file number 210507. It's a resolution from Parks and Rec Committee approving the contract with Epic Trail Design LLC for Phase 2 of the Sylvan Hill Bike Park improvements. I would entertain a motion. Motion by, oh my goodness, Watson. Second by Larson. Alder Ryan, your light is on.
Thank you, Mayor. Jamie, are you still there?
I am still here, yes.
Okay. Well, I was just reading the resolution, and as part of the fiscal impact, it says $1,500 for construction and installation of boardwalk. And I guess the way I was reading the resolution, it made it sound like you got a bid, you were hoping for 3, you got only 1, estimated at $24,431, and that it was decided to go ahead and not do the boardwalk, and so that the Epic Trail, the Central Wisconsin Off-Road Cycling Coalition has raised $22,931, and they have a grant they're working on. So I guess I was under the impression that fiscal impact would not be $1,500 but 0, because you're delaying a portion of the project. Am I?
Well, we're not delaying a portion of the project. That $1,500 is what our department already had budgeted for those boardwalks. We had agreed to build the boardwalks like we have in the past. So that is where that is. It's part of the project. It's just not part of the scope of the contractor. It's part of what we had agreed and budgeted for as trail maintenance out there.
Okay, well, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm not seeing any other discussion. I think we're ready to vote.
Please vote. Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much. All right, we are moving on to file number 210505. It's an ordinance from Plan Commission rezoning 117 and 119 East Chalice Street from a single-family residential zoning district to a heavy industrial zoning district. I would entertain a motion. Motion by Neal. Do I have a second? Second by Herbst. Any discussion here? Yes, Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and could I ask Public Works Director Lindman to come
Sure.
up if he's willing? Thank you. So obviously, as we've seen in the recent past, and I had provided a communication to the Plan Commission on this matter, just kind of differentiating what sets apart this type of zoning going from residential to industrial, which I'd say 99.9% of the time in this particular neighborhood would not only be just intensely opposed, but kind of completely inappropriate. Could you describe for the body and the public just why this is different and how it's going to actually reduce disruption to residential properties around it? At least that was indicated in the packet from Mr. Lenz, and I think we've talked about this before.
Yeah, so for the body, the idea behind this property that was purchased was to expand the yard waste site. It'll about double the size of the yard waste site, so it'll allow us to have more storage area, allow cars to come in off the street, and just really, hopefully move cars through there during the heavy times a lot quicker. But the uses will be similar to what we're doing right now at the current yard waste site. So, and just for the use that we're using it, our zoning code requires this to be heavy industrial, so.
Thank you, that's very helpful. And yes, because of those reasons, you know, I think this is, even though it may not be apparent on its face, is going to actually kind of mitigate some problems for the residential zone around it. And this is a government effort in the people's interest. This is not a for-profit manufacturing endeavor, nor are we going to be moving industrial materials or products by rail or any other means through the neighborhood. That's right, isn't that, Mr. Lindman?
Correct. Yep.
So, there we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other requests to speak. I think we're ready to vote on this.
Please vote. Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. All right, we are moving on to file number 210506. It's an ordinance from the Plan Commission rezoning 209, 211, and 215 Short Street and 1214 North Third Street from a two-flat residential zoning district to a planned unit development zoning district, and to approve the general development plan to allow for a 4-unit multifamily development with associated parking. I would entertain a motion. Motion by Rasmussen, second by Neal. Any discussion? I'm not seeing any.
Please vote. Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. We're moving on to file number 210508. That's another ordinance from the Plan Commission rezoning 617 and 621 Forest Street from a neighborhood mixed-use zoning district to a planned unit development zoning district, and approving the general development plan to allow for office space, vehicle sales, and a parking lot. I would entertain a motion. Motion by Herbst, second by Martins. Any discussion? Alder Peckham.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to say that there has been some give and take between staff, or, kind of arguing or working for the maximum adherence to our rules and the applicant. And so they've been going back and forth, and it's been a cordial exchange, and it's going well. So I think as long as it continues to go well, there has been a change in the, what's coming back to the Planning Commission instead of a 23 car parking lot is going to drop to 17, so there is more green space. So especially in light of that, I hope we pass this. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any other requests to speak.
Please vote. Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to file number 210509, an ordinance from Plan Commission rezoning 1520 Elm Street from a suburban mixed-use zoning district to a planned unit development zoning district, and approving the general development plan to allow for a new mixed-use apartment development. I would entertain a motion. Motion by Rasmussen. Do I have a second? Second by Neal. Alder Ryan.
Mayor. I wanted to alert the rest of the council of this project from Locklery Development. I believe they're from Plover, that they have been working on tearing down the Plaza Towers, other side areas, including the pool and that. So that is down, and so you can really see the 1 acre southern part of the lot at this point. I think when this proposal was originally discussed with TIF funding a few years ago, there was an incomplete application and no plans except what things were going to be torn down. And it just happens that this property is between 14th and 17th Avenue at Elm. And there is an entrance and an exit there that's about halfway up the block. And so the plan is for a 4-story building with a restaurant on the top and somewhat L-shaped with some underground parking, but there still is a need for a large amount of surface parking as well. My concern is mainly because of where the entrance and exit is on the north side of Elm Street, that in the original proposal 2 or 3 years ago, it was talking about using the entrance and exit off of 17th Avenue. And it does seem like that would help and keep the traffic from piling up at the stoplight at 17th Avenue, as well as the Mountain Lanes apartments that are across the street. So I am concerned about the traffic pattern, and we did have a death there, maybe it's 5-10 years ago now, of a bicyclist that ended up not stopping, going down the hill, I think in fall or winter, and was killed at that corner by a driver of a car. So I'm hoping that we can somehow be able to really limit how much traffic can be going out on Elm Street, because we're going to end up with a traffic jam. And also with the potential next item, wanting to have overflow parking across the street and walking in the middle of the block, as well as the buses going up Elm to go to John Muir. It's kind of a perfect storm that can happen, and I wish we had better planning for those entrances and exit from the Planning Commission, but there has not been any objections. So I know my residents are very concerned with the traffic and wish we had it planned ahead of time, and so I want you to be aware of those facts. Thank you.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. We talked about this just briefly also in the SISM committee. We've not taken any action on it because there's really no point at this point. People haven't moved in, the building isn't up yet. But we had agreed to keep an eye on this and ask staff to continue to network with Locre as the project comes together. And if there are pinch points identified between either bikes and pedestrians or the residents or the flow of normal traffic, and, you know, whether that has to do with, you know, access or nearby intersections or sidewalks or whatever, we obviously would keep a watchful eye on that. And if there is an issue, we would certainly ask staff to study it and make a recommendation to us. So we're not blind to that. And so once that comes together a little more and people are moving about in that area, we'll be able to see a little better. But you can't solve a problem that doesn't exist yet. And today, no one is living there. Nothing's happening. There's not enough volume to necessitate a whole lot of change. But we have had the police department look at that area before, and they'll continue to.
Thank you. Alder Wodinski.
Well, hello. After reviewing the plans, I like the fact that this property has the two entrances off two different streets, and it's not going into the residential area, same as it's been in the past. And with my experience in the past on the traffic flow and traffic management, I think this is a perfect location for that Elm Street exit entrance to coincide with the busier street that Elm is and not the neighborhood, and keep some of the traffic off of the 17th Ave entrance. Where they're coming off Elm, they'll have the traffic signals which will assist them in being safer, egressing onto a busier street. So I like the plan.
Thank you. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Myself, I don't like this plan because I don't think that Elm Street was built to maintain this kind of this kind of traffic. And I'm not going to vote for it at this time. Thank you.
All right, I am not seeing any more requests to speak. I think we're ready to vote.
Please vote. Motion passes 8-3.
Thank you. All right, we are moving on to file number 210509. It's another ordinance from Plan Commission rezoning 1601 Elm Street from a suburban mixed-use zoning district to a planned unit development zoning district, and approving the general development plan to allow for off-street parking for a new multifamily mixed-use development. I would entertain a motion. Got a motion by Rasmussen and a second by Neal. Alder Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as a note, for this property for additional parking, this is the lowest terrace of the Mountain Lanes apartment property that is right behind the Cricket and Tobacco Outlet, and where it was, I guess, old asphalt and that's planned to be additional ground parking, but for the property across the street. So I am concerned that people crossing in the middle of the block could be a big safety issue, and that we are talking about bus traffic during the day as well. And I guess I can envision, because of the different, how much concrete is on the north side of that corner, I can envision that a skywalk might be something worthwhile in the future. But I guess this is something we'll have to look at. But pedestrian customers crossing the street in the middle of the block, I am very concerned, and I wish we had more details from the developer on how he was going to handle this. But otherwise, I just see it's something CISM will have to deal with. Thank you.
Not seeing any more requests to speak. I think we're ready to vote.
Please vote. Motion passes 8-3.
Thank you very much. We are on our almost last item. It's public comment and suggestions. All right, I'm not seeing anybody coming forward with public comment. Oh.
Hi, Deborah Rand, 702 Elm Street. This is my second public comments in the last two city council meetings, that the transit committee will be meeting again in about 10 days. And then I'm hearing from more transit riders and other groups that work in transit on a state and local area. But I do believe for the Transit Commission, we really need a subcommittee of transit riders to give us more input. Having input from one rider with low vision, I don't think is sufficient for what we're looking at for the whole transit system, and hoping to make major upgrades and changes in service of that. And we need to hear from the transit riders. And so I'm hoping, Mayor, you will go ahead and appoint a subcommittee for transit, hopefully sometime soon in the future. Thank you.
All right, with that, I would entertain a motion for the last item on our agenda to adjourn. Motion by Watson. All those in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you.